Our guest today has spent over 2 decades influencing and changing behaviour through powerful campaigns across fitness, sports and leisure. Her company, Promote PR, has earned an exceptional reputation for great work with its mission to get people moving. If that wasn't enough, our guest is also a trustee of the Women's Sport Trust, raising the visibility and increasing the impact of women's sport. For a lesson in really making a difference, please join me in welcoming Sue Anstiss MBE to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Welcome, Sue.
Hello, thank you very much indeed.
So since we met, you've got a few sort of letters after your name.
Yes, indeed.
And that's it. So tell me what that is, because it sounds wonderful. It's very, did you go and meet the Queen or something?
Yeah, I met Prince Charles actually.
Really?
Yeah, Queen wasn't there that day. But yeah, no, it's a Queen's honour.
Right.
So they give out a number each year, different levels and so on. So yeah, it was a real fantastic experience. It's been really good, I think, within the industry, and it's just kind of verified what we do. So I got it for grassroots, contribution to grassroots and women's sport.
Right.
So I think it just reinforced that that's what we are as an agency. It's what we're about. It's what I've been about. So yeah, really.
So tell us a bit about that story, just so everyone understands.
In terms of the MBE? Or yeah. So it was my team actually that submitted me for it. So you have to apply to be awarded it, and they had, I think, about 20 letters from different people saying why they felt I was a worthy recipient of these citations. So they submitted that, and then it's about 18 months or so that it's considered by civil servants and goes up to the palace, etc. They sort of check you out, make sure there's nothing dubious about you, and then they award a certain number each year. So yeah, it's a huge honour. Really, massive. Meant a lot to be awarded it, and obviously great with the family to go to Buckingham Palace and to receive it and everything as well. Yeah, really special.
And what was it you were doing in women's sport? Tell us a little bit about that.
So I guess it's just been the last 20 years of grassroots sport. I think that's always been my passion, is participation probably. So we do work in elite sport as well, but we tend to use elite sport to drive participation rather than working perhaps with Premiership football or Formula 1, etc. It's been very grassroots led. And then on a voluntary basis, I sit on a number of boards. So I'm chair of Get Berkshire Active, an active partnership in the county. As you mentioned, I'm a trustee for the Women's Sport Trust charity. So we help to raise profile for women's sport, get more media coverage, more funding into women's sport as well. Right. I've been on the UK Active Board in the past. I was on the Active Partnerships National Board. So I guess over time, I have just given quite a lot of voluntary time to causes that I think I feel really passionate about. So, yeah. So
tell us a bit about your background. How did you get to where you are today? How did you get this MBE? And what was the starting point of that?
I did it. I was a Loughborough graduate, so I did sports science and English. Books and games, as my brother said at the time. So he mocked me for it. But books and games at Loughborough. And then I worked for a couple of years for Cadbury's, actually, in sales. And I worked for Gatorade, the sports drink. So in sports sponsorship really was my background for a few years. And then they never launched a brand in the UK. They were about to launch, but chose not to for various reasons. So interestingly, you look at, I guess, how life changes. I was made redundant at 26. And from the dream job of working at Gatorade and travelling to countries and working with sports brands, so I then set up on my own. So at 26, set up Promote PR.
26 you started that business. Wow, that's brave.
It was at the time. I think I didn't. It was almost like that was the option. It was either, if it didn't work, I could go and get another job. It wasn't like I had a family to support or a massive mortgage, etc. So I set up, and I had been doing a little bit at an agency with Gatorade. So they then came on board as my first client in Europe. And also with Bupa. So we were working in triathlon with Spencer Smith, who you may have heard of, a triathlete from many years ago, sponsoring him. And working with the triathlons, we brought Bupa in to sponsor a Bath triathlon. And then I brought Bupa into the fitness industry, so to meet Bob Payton at the FIA, to sponsor the Commit to Get Fit campaign. And Bob was so generous in his kind of time and mentoring me, just introduced me to the sector really. So from working with them and bringing in them as a sponsor, I then used to attend board meetings and do the FIA's PR. And then met Brent at FitPro and Dave Giampaolo at Forza and et cetera, et cetera. So through that, just created this big base in fitness. So we were very much fitness for the first 10 or so years as an agency, really.
Right. So a female entrepreneur at 26 starting your business is not, it's not a common thing that you hear about, is it?
Yeah. No, it's interesting, isn't it? I guess looking back now, that I'm doing so much to push, females in business. And at the time, I don't think I felt there were barriers. I was just doing what I did and doing what I loved, really. And I think at the time, Bob used to introduce me as his PR agency, and I used to say, we're not PR, because I pictured PR as marble floors and lilies in reception and people in black. I am in black today, but people in black. That wasn't what we were about. So I think I always felt we were more about the sector than we were the trade that we were in. And then probably the last 15 years, we've moved back to what's my passion, which is sport. And I love the fitness sector. I've been out at FIBO recently. It's an amazing industry to be in. But actually, grassroots sport, I think, in terms of what it gives to people, the difference it can make to lives, that's probably where our passion is. So we're now working with 15, 20 different sports, national governing bodies, teams, events. So sports become very much the mainstay of our business, really.
Yeah. So what influenced you to become, I guess now, probably at the time it wasn't, entrepreneur wasn't the hit word, but who, or was there someone that influenced you to do that, to set up your own business? Because, like I say, it's not a common path to take, is it?
It's interesting, isn't it? A good question. I haven't really thought about what the reasoning was for it. I can remember being at home in my little back bedroom in Devon Way in Heston and having my fax machine and my Rolodex and my floppy disk. And it was almost like that when you played as a child, having a sweet shop, or it felt like that novelty of like, oh, this is my stuff. I've got my business cards and everything as well. So I can remember that excitement of having my own thing. And I remember the people that I worked with. So I worked at Quaker Oats. They owned Gatorade at the time. Some of the women that I know now still that were almost my mentors were like, are you sure? It was a bit of a mad thing to go off and think you could do your own thing at 26. But I think I think it was not having the risk. I think my thing was, what's the worst that could happen? It might fail and I'd go and get a job. Or I was in no different situation if it didn't work. So maybe doing it early is fantastic. I see people I know now setting businesses up when they're older and they've got kids and stuff, and there's more of a risk there. But I was able to work late nights, every weekend. People knew if ever they wanted me, I would be at my desk working full on, because you need to do that in the early days, as you all know too, of being an entrepreneur. So
one of the things, I guess, that we've sort of communicated about, and I guess you see it in the industry, both from a business perspective and also if we talk about the fitness industry for a moment, there isn't many women doing that. We've had some comments about on the podcast that, there's loads of men, what about all the women that are doing great stuff? Why do you think there's probably, is it that these stories are not, rising to the top and they're not being talked about? Or is it that, probably there's not as many women doing this? And if so, why do you think that is? I think
there aren't as many women doing this. And if you look at the stats of women that reach sort of C-suite levels within business around the world, or, in the States, it's usually about 15% that women that are in those roles. Politicians in parliaments across the world, about 15%. Even in the charity sector, leading women, it's about 20%. So there aren't as many women as men out there doing these things. And I guess where my passion comes is using sport and be able to change the world through using sport and getting some more equality there to reflect that back as well. But I think there just aren't that number. And it's interesting, isn't it? I guess I feel part of my role has been to call that out, make some noise about it, because I think a lot of the time it isn't that people men in the sector are trying not to promote and find great women for roles. I think they just don't see it, that we don't see what's right in front of our eyes, almost become a bit blinkered. We recruit in the style of the people that we are ourselves. That's completely natural and normal, that you surround yourself with people that are like you. If you think about your friendship circle, or it tends to reflect who you are. And I think people do that in recruitment. So, and we're guilty of it ourselves as an agency. So for years and years, we were all women in our agency for years, and women who had been to Loughborough, who had done sports science, who little mini me's, because I would interview people and think, I know they could do it, that I could resonate with them, and I know they can do a good job. And actually, in the last 2 or 3 years, we've now got 3 guys in our team. We're much more, we're not just all middle-class white girls. We're really mixed in terms of who we are as an agency. And actually, we've had our best, the best year last year and flying this year. And I think a lot of that is down to the fact that we're not just all the same people in this little bubble of thinking the same things too. So lots of research that shows boards that are more diverse, companies that are more diverse will have more success. So it's not that people need to be doing it because it's the right thing to do. You should be doing it because it will make your business more successful as well.
Yeah.
So I think I've seen that on the other side myself, really.
And what do you think about younger women? Do you think that they're, do you think that this is something that they move towards as saying, actually, there's examples out there, this is something I want to do? Or do you think there's probably, not the, I guess, you know, that isn't a path that many people kind of see as an option.
Entrepreneurship, running your own business?
I guess, or even taking some of these leadership roles. And there are some great examples of people that are doing that, but I think in general, you know, 15% is quite a small number. Why do you think more young women are not sort of thinking about that like younger guys are, would you say?
I think they don't see themselves. I think it's, you know, if you can't see it, you can't be it. It's a well-known phrase, but actually if you look, and we find this at the boards I sit on when we're looking for new trustees, actually if you look on the website and everybody looks the same and you don't look like that, why would I feel that I can do that too? So I think even when women are in those roles, often we're not seeing enough of them, they're not out there. I think people feel it's not for them, that it's, and within the industry specifically, I know there are some women doing amazing stuff in senior leadership or in sales, etc. But it's seen as quite a male environment. You know, will I be accepted? Am I one of the lads? And I want to work in a different way to the guys that are out there doing it. So I think it's confidence, and you know, that whole imposter syndrome. I think lots of women, I think men have that too. I think I read something recently, you know, if you don't have it, you're probably a psychopath if you actually never have an imposter syndrome where you feel like you're not quite good enough. But I think females definitely have that. So we have, you know, and a lot of this people applying for jobs that women will say, I can just do this bit and this bit, but I can't do that. And the guys will come in and say, you know, I can do it all. I'm very confident, I can do, you know. So that, and although that's a generalisation, I think there definitely is an element of that, of not going for something unless you feel you can properly do it all. Whereas a guy would probably think, yeah, I could do half of it, so therefore I'll throw my hat into the ring. I think there's a bit of people not applying for it too. There's some research I saw recently that only 4% of venture capital goes into female entrepreneurs in terms of investment and so on. And a bit of that is, again, just the men who are primarily at the VC top level making those decisions, feeling that more confident in people that are like them that could do the job too. So I guess there's always different things that are causing that to happen. But I guess one of the things, I know you had Emma Barry on the podcast recently. So Emma has set up the Women in Fitness Association. So we've in the States, and we've just launched a UK council. Elena and others have driven that. And it's not just about women in the industry coming together to unite and to bring other young women through. It's also to help the guys and the senior people in the industry to say, what can we do? I think that's what we have. I'd like to have more women on my board. I'd like to have more women in senior roles. What can we do to make sure they feel confident to step forward, or that we're when we do put an advert out, you know, there's enough, or are we not fishing in the right place to find those people? So where can we go and find those women and give them the confidence that we'll support them when they do come through?
One of the things I've certainly found out since I've been doing the podcast is that a lot of myself, a lot of times you don't feel you're good enough or confident enough. Like, I was petrified to be on camera. So you end up not doing something because you're own insecurities. And you know, now we've obviously, you know, impacted a lot of people with some great messages, and even if, you know, one person from each podcast does something from what we say, you know, that's a lot better. That's a great result if I hadn't have done it. So I'm starting to see the benefit of, you know, probably you know, your insecurities are probably holding back changing people's lives. You know, just being scared of saying the wrong thing in front of a camera. I suppose, do you think with sort of younger potential female entrepreneurs, it's about giving them the confidence that actually, you know, they're probably holding themselves back. You know, they could really make a difference if they wasn't concerned about them maybe not being able to do what their counterparts.
And perceptions and so on as well. And I do think, you know, it's tough, I think. I listen to a lot of podcasts and audiobooks from politicians, but if you look at the vitriol that women often get from standing up and saying their part, and you know, we've seen a lot of that with female politicians in the UK recently, but also women in business. So I think sometimes, especially as a young woman, it's harder to stand up and say and call stuff out, or to have confidence in things. And I think I'm probably past that. Maybe my MBE, I think, probably helped that I feel actually I've got not respected, but I think actually I'm now known for what's gone before almost. But I know I've called stuff out. So recently at a conference where an all-male lineup of speakers, and it had been the same, you know, a couple of years ago. And actually it was only 5 years ago at UK Actives conference for 2 years, all-male speakers, not a single female keynote there. So it's like almost having the confidence to say that, and I guess now I've got a little bit of a social media following, so when I do say it, people kind of jump on and comment too. And similarly on BBC sports coverage, you know, when that's not been strong, it's having the confidence to stand up and say it. I don't know that I would have done that 10, 15, 20 years ago, because I would have been worried about how people perceive me or... So I definitely think that comes with age and experience and almost not caring, but thinking actually someone's got to do this. You've got to call it out, because if I don't, it'll just carry on down the line as well. So I don't know if it was a younger woman when you're more worried about, and I guess it doesn't really matter what people think because it's my own business and I'm doing my own stuff. But if I was employed by somebody who might want me not to comment in that way, it might be different too. So
yeah, I think sometimes I've certainly learnt myself, and I'm getting on a bit as well, but sometimes you've just got to kind of, not be afraid, and you can be your own worst enemy in terms of being able to make a difference. And I guess, the advantage, the fact that there is only 15% females in these positions, as you say, means that you're probably going to get noticed, which is a good thing. People are probably going to say, okay, well, that's something different. So I suppose you've got, yourself have got the ability to probably make an impact where, the guys, for a lot of reasons, probably get drowned out, and everybody's saying they can do things. And I suppose there's a great opportunity. In terms of skills, if you had to think back to your younger 26-year-old, what would you say are some of the skills in order to kind of move ahead in business and influence? What would be some of those skills that you think are important to kind of round out and to focus on as you're going up, so that you are able to probably, make that difference that you are now?
I guess for me, it's been about networking. When I talk to younger women and go to universities, talk to boys and girls about their future careers, just networking and connections, and now it's so much easier through digital. You can do that, remotely, virtually, but actually building those connections and relationships and building trust. And I think not screwing people over because you may meet them again in the future. And even if you don't, just be kind to people. So I think that's years ago, about to us as an agency, what our values were, and I said, we're generous. And I think at the time, obviously it did bother me because it's still in my head now, years on. Someone said, you can't put that, it can't be one of your values that you're generous. But I think we have been really generous, and actually what goes around, we didn't do it to get stuff back, but actually you reap what you sow. And I think people feel, if you're positive and you give and you're generous in your time, and we've helped people when they might have been, they've lost a job, or they're looking for advice or introductions. So we do a lot of that. So I think but having a network enables you to do that too. So I think generosity, which probably aren't necessarily skills, they're more of personal values and traits. Yeah. But that's definitely why we've had that longevity and that success, I would say, is because we've worked hard to look after people. It's important.
So outside of the networking, because I use my wife as an example, she's great at people, so better than me, and she can understand people at a totally different level. She's like, didn't you see that? And I'm like, no. And she's like, well, they're trying to say something to you, But I guess the ability to connect is much better than men, I think, in general. So I think that's a great one, and I think women generally do a better job at networking if they've got the confidence to go into a room full of men and do that. What else do you think, in order to sort of get, to influence? Because I think everything in business is about influencing people, whether it's, about your product or about a message. What would be some of the things in terms of your ability to influence would you say is, you could... people should focus on improve in order to be able to do that better? I think knowledge is so valuable and often overlooked. I think we often live in this little bubble of the world that we know, especially for some of the suppliers that we work with, our operators, that's the world they know is where they work day to day. So I think, and again now, amazing podcasts like your own, but podcasts, listening to new audiobooks, reading, there's just so much that's out there. So to constantly be, maybe not just listening, music on the radio is lovely, but is there more that you could be listening to broaden yourself? So I know I hear stuff coming out of my mouth that I've heard or I've read or I've seen, so I think that constantly having a thirst to learn more, to never feel you know it, there's so much that's out there to learn that will enable you to be more articulate or to form those opinions that you don't even know where it's coming from, but it's all those different bits together. So I would definitely say I think that's something that's really important, that so you want to be a good writer, you need to be a good reader, that to be reading is really key in terms of gaining more knowledge and thoughts, and I think then that's what makes you valuable. I mean, what I love with the clients that we work with, obviously we're about comms and media, but it's the bigger piece about strategy and what they're doing with their business
where we can really add value, and that's because we've listened and read and learned elsewhere as well. So I think that's really important, never to stop learning.
Yeah.
I do sound like an old lady.
So talking about your podcast, you're about to start one. What's been some of the concerns, nervousness? What has been some of those things that have gone through your mind that have maybe stopped you to probably doing it a bit sooner, or that you're waiting to overcome? Come on, tell us about it.
About all of it.
We talked off camera about the power of podcasting in order to share a message, and again, influence for, based on something positive. You're doing a great job at influencing women in sport. Tell us about what some of the things that kind of prevented you, and how did you get over some of those fears and concerns?
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? It's a bit of that whole putting yourself out there, and it's quite very public. I mean, even coming here today, it's lovely talking to you, but I was nervous coming here, and I think it is that you've got to just go and do it anyway, and you'll enjoy it.
What was you nervous about?
I think nervous talking to you. I was nervous that I might say something really random, or something that would I might be too candid in my thoughts and opinions. I haven't been yet, so I hope we're okay. But nervous about that. And I guess on my podcast side, it's that whole will people want to be interviewed? I think it's like quality as well. I think like you, I look at the business over those years. We worked really hard to have a high quality product that reflects what we're about. So can I create a podcast that will, whether it's visually and vocally, the quality of the audio, the quality of the guests, will I be able to ask the right questions, all that kind of stuff too. So I've been nervous about everything really, but as I've tipped things off, we're getting there. I haven't started them yet, so my first interviews are on Monday next week, and then I've got a couple of weeks moving forward. So some amazing guests, but it's and that's the first part, I guess, getting them in. I've come here to learn from you, Matthew. If I can do anywhere near what you've done with this podcast, that'd be amazing. But I think it is just that whole the not knowing. It's something new. But I actually love change, and again, I encourage my team. I think it's easy to work within the comfort circle of what you know, but you'll only grow as you try things that are different. And we try to have a real failure doesn't matter. If you get it wrong, that's complete. If you're not failing, you're not learning and growing. So as long as we're forgiving, and as long as you don't keep making the same mistake, that's completely fine. So I think I need to almost tell myself that's also okay to go out, and if I mess a couple up, that's fine. I'll learn and do it differently in the future. So I think sometimes that desire to get it right from the start, but that isn't how life happens, really, is it?
Do you think that perfection, because you are, and I've worked with you, for many years and had a long relationship. Do you think that, and I understand that, high quality is important, but when you're starting something new, do you think that perfection can sometimes be a bit of a bit of a sort of a handicap in terms of moving forward?
And it's funny, isn't it? I think I came from a background, I don't know, I was at school, my school reports were always, she's very careless, she writes too fast. That was always my school reports. And when I launched Promote, and I mentioned that whole little being a back bedroom at Devon Way in Heston, and I was working for Bupa, and I knew that they had big agencies, and I was this little, I never wanted them to say was, she's that girl that works out of a back bedroom in Heston. So my contact reports, whatever, would always be there the next morning, immediately after the meeting, and they would be perfect. And I worked so hard to make sure everything was perfect because I wanted to overcome any impression that I wasn't as professional as the rest. And I've kept that with me the whole time. And it's in the last couple of years, not that we become slapdash at all, but I've got an amazing MD in the agency now who's come from a much bigger agency background, and she's quite different to me. She's a bit more, get it out the door. If it's good enough, let's go on and move on to the next thing. And that's changed, I think, a lot of what we've done, because in the past, I probably have been, you're positive, and the grammar is obviously important, but even the layout, you can go back with your red pen and change people's writing. It's fine, it's okay. So there's that. And I listened to amazing Jess Phillips, MP, who talked about her, actually she could get an award for, just it's good enough and get it out the door. And I think Naz is very similar, that actually that's how you get stuff done. If you're always waiting for everything to be perfect, it'll just halve your capacity to produce stuff. So is it good enough? And so I think definitely the last couple of years, people will be looking now to see if the stuff is coming out of our office is not as good. It is as good, but it doesn't need that last 10% to make it perfect. Yeah. It will work as it is. So I think I've let go a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you can use that as a bit of a crutch as to not, I've got to get this right and the camera right. I'm certainly like that with our business, and probably been guilty of the other side of just so many things don't happen because you want them to be.
They're only going to be happen if they're going to be great.
Yeah, and I guess when you're so attached to a business and your standards could be different to what, some of the things that we do even in our trade shows, nobody's going to ever notice or see.
Yeah,
You know, you're
but
probably
you
the only
do.
one to see that. And I think it's important to strive, but I guess you've got to have that balance of, you know, is it stopping getting stuff out?
Absolutely, absolutely. And what's it preventing? What are the things that are preventing you from doing that could be achieving and moving on to?
Yeah. So let's talk about the industry then, because I know you've been in and around the fitness side for many years. What would you, from when you came in to now, have you seen any changes in terms of the amount of people that were impacting, the amount of people that are now working out, or is it still the same? What's your views on how that's improved or not?
Sadly, I don't think it's changed enough as much as I would have liked it to. 25 years ago, I started working in the sector. And I think it's circular. Things go and come back around again. So it's funny being at Vibo and my colleague coming back and telling me, oh, I've just seen these, you know, wobble boards, or I've seen these. Anyway, she was seeing stuff that was like the Reebok slide from, I was like, yeah, we saw that in 1998 with Forza. But so she was kind of coming back and telling me things that are almost being reinventing themselves. I think from that side, I guess sometimes it's a bit frustrating that things haven't moved on as much. And I have some concerns in that whole passion that we have for the boutique sector and where the sector's going. And that might be because my love and passion is more around mass participation and that getting inactive people to be more active and the difference that can make, and that I think in the past the fitness sector has been quite exclusive, and a bit of that around the imaging and the body beautifuls and how that makes people feel that are aspiring to be like that but may never reach that. I think the boutiques has taken us a bit more down that market. Again, if I look at a lot of the Instagrams and whatever for the boutique sector, it is very much about that, not unattainable, but hugely aspirational look and feel. And it just seems like it's a small part of what is a massive active leisure sector that's obviously making a lot of noise at the moment. And I was at the Sweat Conference, and you've listened to some of your podcasts too. But I feel a little bit like it's the Emperor's clothing.
Right.
That it's this amazing thing but actually who's making that much, from what I hear and being at FIBA and the European Health and Fitness Conference and talking to people, are people making that much money in it? Actually, it's almost like a conflict of all these millennials want loads of variety, so we're opening boutiques with one modality, and then people don't stay for very long either, so that was a bit of I am aware of this, but hearing a guy from Orange Theory, they expanded their average membership to a year. It's not long, so I think in that whole boutique side, I worry that we're moving away from where we could have the biggest impact on society, which is being inclusive and getting people, which is probably a bit more of a leisure centre, community feel of sport and fitness and wellbeing. So I guess that not frustrates me. I just feel a bit it's a bit not cynical about it. It just feels like it's giving the wrong impression perhaps about our industry. And I've got 3 teenage daughters, so I think also a bit of that Instagram, the Fitspo influencers, what does that do for people's mental health to constantly see these beautiful bodies up there? What's that doing to the health and mental health of the population, really?
Yeah.
It's a bit broad. That wasn't really the question you asked. But
it's a good point. And I think the challenge, I suppose, from a business perspective is growing that, but it seems as though for a long time we're still focusing on those
15%.
Small percentage of people, and kind of finding more creative ways of doing that. You work with a lot of big companies and probably have a great understanding of what happens in these conversations. Why do you think that is? Do you think they're just following what other people are doing and recycling the same idea? It just seems that there's this big 80% over here, which is probably very interesting, but nobody's sort of looking at it.
I do think, so Gym Group's a lovely client of ours, we work with Anytime Fitness, so there are definitely operators. I think what John Trahan's done with the Gym Group in terms of that, making it more accessible to people in terms of affordability and ease of access and so on. So I think there have been big shifts in that budget sector. There is good stuff happening, but I just feel there's not enough of it. And I think probably the quality of staff and the people, and again, I do feel like I'm banging on for the same things that we were discussing 25 years ago. But to hear people in high-profile chains saying, maybe our staff have been a bit mediocre in the past, I would admit they were mediocre, and now we've got these rock star instructors and we're auditioning them and they're going to be in our special little boutique boxes over here. But what about all the people that have been paying all that money to come to facilities for years? Why have we not had amazing personal trainers, instructors, exercise to music instructors and so on? So it does feel like for me, that seems really obvious, that we should be looking after the people that are going to help our customers come and meet their goals and feel better about themselves. But it hasn't been. I think it's been like a race to the bottom for a lot of the, I have to be careful, I don't have the training providers and the awarding bodies and so on. But it is, you can get a PT qualification online over a weekend in 2 weeks. You must see that that's clearly not going to be the quality of someone to come and deal with an uncle who's got a cardiac rehab and is coming in and wants to, learn fitness. So fine if you are, and I think it was that obsession with millennials and that feeling that we all think millennials are these young, fit, affluent that are going to come into the gyms and so on. But actually there's loads of millennials to Manchester and Sheffield and that might be out of work or in college or don't have the funding to come and pay for the fitness that's there, but would still benefit from physical activity and being part of a hub and being in a community setting. So I see all the benefits of physical activity, but just don't think our sector necessarily packages it for that extra 80% that might have some money and might be interested in something, but probably not a super intense HIIT program with lights and music and everything. That's actually massively intimidating.
Why do you think? Why do you think that is? Because it doesn't seem to have changed a lot. Particularly in terms of how they package and present it. I know there are exceptions, so I am definitely generalising, but there is a general, ourselves have probably been guilty of that as well in some cases. But why do you think that is? Do you think that's where the money is and that's what people are focusing on, or do you think it's something else? I
don't know. Yeah, I do ask myself that question. I do think it is about the money, and I guess from a sector point of view at the moment, it's all that venture capital money that's coming in because it looks sexy and it looks on formula like it should be a way to make more money. And I guess that was the same of the Fitness First and LA Fitnesses and whatever in the past, that it was other people's money that came in. So I do feel that definitely is something that attracts people too. But it's interesting, isn't it? So I confessed this before, but I invested in One Rebel. We all invested in One Rebel because Kev was there and said, come and invest it. So I bought a few shares, like everyone did, a few £100 or £1,000 or something. Because it was Kevin and it felt like it's a good thing, let's invest in. I've never been into One Rebel. Actually, I'm not that fit now, but at the time that I did, I was doing my age group triathlon. I was fit as an older woman, but I was a fit older woman. But I wouldn't go into Barry's in One Rebel and do workout because I would feel intimidated. I would feel I didn't know what I was doing. And I've been in this sector for 25 years. I got a sports science degree. I deadlift in the gym with my husband's a PT, so I understand how all the kit works, but in that environment, I would feel it wasn't for me, I would feel intimidated. So if I feel like that, and I'm relatively fit and aware of the sector, it's almost like we're alienating so much that could be coming in. And so, although that is where the money is, I think actually, I just feel like there is so much more money that could be there if people perhaps tweaked their offering.
Yeah. And when you say that, because I've obviously thought about it a lot, do you think that's really that's where the money is? Or if there's 80, and I spoke earlier with Pete Cohen, and he said there's sort of three different. He categorised people in three different groups. There's the ones that will just work out regardless. It doesn't matter of the gym, the space. They just understand it. They get it. They've got the right habits. There's the ones that are never going to do anything no matter what you do, and then there's probably the biggest percentage, which he mentioned was in the middle. If that is the bigger percentage, surely there's probably a lot more opportunity from a business perspective to look at that.
Absolutely, and find a product that suits them. And I do think I love Visco Can campaigns. So Visco Can,
what's that?
The Sport England's Visco Can campaign. It's very much normalising women and activity, and it's okay to get sweaty and just very real fitness as a national campaign. But one of the things the research from the last campaign was talked about how we all dip in and out of exercise, that we're not consistent, we're not going to exercise from now for the next 10 years. And I think as an industry, because we've been full of people that are passionate about fitness and walking around FIBO, you just see it, don't you? And so that's where I've often felt a bit of an imposter. Actually, I'm either a super into it, training triathlon, whatever, or I'm a complete sloth, or I might do a bit of walking, so I'm like up and down. And actually, to see this research, it said that's completely normal. People do through life, and kids, and not just even in years, but even within a year, you might be really passionate. But I think almost as a sector, sometimes we don't see that because we are, or the people running the sector have been that 5 to 10% that absolutely get it every day and couldn't go, to work without having had an amazing workout and understand. And obviously, I know it's good for me. I know I should be doing it, but life gets in the way. And I think that's those people. Whereas in the past, we've tied people into annual, whatever, lifetime memberships, 5-year memberships. And actually, in reality, they're only ever going to be there for a year or so because we're not helping them achieve their goals, you could say. But they're not going to be there for that long. So is there something more around looking at all those people and giving them something that's right for them as and when, but not necessarily tying them in and then making them feel guilty that they're paying for something they're not using? And I think the industry has moved on, obviously, with its more the pay and play element of boutiques and other centres too. But I do think it does feel like we're so focused on this sector. This is a good podcast. I'm sharing stuff I've never shared before, but we're so focused on this sector because we're of that sector, and we absolutely know, of course, we should be working out every day, but that's not reality.
So if we look at these two subjects that we spoke about then, so sport being one, so you've obviously had a deep experience in both sport, industry and fitness, and then the third side is women. Looking at things like social media, and I've got a young daughter, and she watches YouTube and this kind of thing, and I suppose at the moment she's young enough not to be impacted, but I suppose what I don't think is very good and healthy is to kind of think that having to look and be in a certain way is kind of, that's the motivation behind it. So if you put those, and I suppose a lot of fitness industry is about having a six-pack and having a booty and all that, all that kind of thing. But there's obviously many more benefits of fitness and health and sport. Do you think that do you think sport and fitness potentially together play a part? And also, in terms of women, do you think that there's an ability to kind of link those together, where it's okay, you are fit, you are active, you're doing it, but you're not doing it because you need to look in a particular sort of way. What's your thoughts on those sort of how those circles converge? It's
really interesting, isn't it? 'Cause I think sometimes we think of fitness, not the boutiques almost, but you do think of that intense fitness coming in to a gym or centre and paying regularly to be there. And I guess it's that bigger fitness of the leisure centres that might be going out for a bike ride with friends and coming back to, or doing a swimming session in the pool, or where it is more community enjoyment. It's not. So I think there's almost there's two different elements of fitness and sport. But I know from my side, why do I exercise? It's because I'm with friends. So I love being with other people. So it's that activity of being together, of just enjoying each other's company, and obviously all those endorphins that come from being physically active. And I do think, for me, that's much more in sport now than it is in fitness. So that's probably, for me personally, reflects what I think from a business and other areas that we're doing as well. So I do think, for some women, obviously it is about body shape and weight. 90% of women don't like their body. Some scary stats on females and their bodies and so on, and how they don't like their bodies. And I worry that the industry almost perpetuates that with those images of, we talked I remember years ago with some of the fitness awards, I should remember the name of the brand, a Scottish company that had some fun, we're for everybody, and it had all different bodies in their marketing. It was like a very profound, they were doing this, not just loads of lycra ladies, super skinny. But I think we almost feel like we've gone full circle and a bit back to that it is still about physical aspiration. And
but even that's about, even showing different body shapes is still talking about body shapes.
Yeah, rather than what's up in here and happiness and well-being and all those things too. Absolutely.
It's still narrowing it down on a particular area, and I wonder whether that is the right message.
The thing for sport, and why I'm so passionate about sport and women's sport and getting women and girls playing sport, is all the things that sport brings in terms of resilience and confidence and teamwork and passion and happiness and and that's you look at my daughters are older than you. I've got 3 teenage daughters, and I look at them and their friends and the anxiety and depression, the stress that teenage girls and boys are facing now, and a lot of that on the female side I can speak of because I've got 3 daughters, is around for the appearance of their bodies, and because exactly as you say, they're looking at constantly at Instagram, whatever, and seeing these unreal images of influencers, and sad that they can't look like them, be like them, what have you. But actually, sport, when I see my kids then playing my children play rugby, play netball, go rowing, it's an escape from all of that, and actually they're celebrating their bodies from being strong and being skillful and being part of a team and all those amazing things that aren't just about how you look. So I guess that's why I feel so passionate about the importance of that side, and then the importance of raising the profile other women having success in their sport, so girls feel they can aspire to that and do that, and that girls don't need to be, you know, a Formula One. They can be driving the cars, not walking on as grid girls or walk on girls for the darts or whatever. They're not just the little, you know, the ring girls in the boxing ring. They're like out there taking part themselves as the athletes too. So that's, and I guess that's a bit I think sport brings, and maybe fitness hasn't done as much of, but I would like to think it might do.
And I think the interesting thing, the word you use there is confidence, and it kind of comes back to business and your original conversation. And you know, one of the things I focus on for my daughter is a confidence. And I suppose if you look at those two sides, sport and fitness, you know, fitness generally, nowadays it's very much about Instagram, and you're comparing yourself, whether it's your likes, your body parts or whatever, to somebody that's a certain way. So certainly from my view, that can't be helping your confidence. You know, even if you're on there and you have got a great body, then, you know, if you get less likes than others, you're constantly fearing, oh no, you know, maybe I'm not good enough. Whereas I suppose the sport thing is, you know, it's general, it seems to be something that does build the confidence, which certainly would have a carryover, I see, you know, in business. I know certainly from a male side that does help, you know, having a grounding in sport is important. So I suppose I'd be interested in your thoughts, but, you know, maybe a better road for women in general, well, everyone, I suppose, is more sport than fitness.
Oh, I go careful what I say here with my fitness clients.
Yeah, but listen, we can be honest. You know, I'm not saying
don't do one or the other. And fitness feeds, you know, you need that core fitness.
Absolutely.
To get in the gym, to be a strong netballer, hockey player, you look at some of those female athletes, and male athletes, you know, it's absolutely, the gym is part of that, but not the gym for the gym's sake, to change your body shape, to feed you and enable you to do other things too. So that, you know, absolutely. There's amazing research, I think it's Ernst & Young, that sort of 90% of senior women in C-suite roles in the States have played team sport at some point. So there's some fantastic stats that actually teams, that winning and losing but still feeling part of a team, and leadership and all those things that sport, that we know sport gives us, that absolutely matter in terms of, you know, I said we talked about the whole entrepreneur in the beginning. Maybe I played lots of sport, lots of team sport as a young person growing up. Maybe that is part of that gives you the confidence to go into other things too. So absolutely, I'm all for fitness, for strong, healthy bodies and mind, and all that it gives us for other things, but not that kind of, for me, is that fitness for fitness sake of how I'm sculpting my shape, or, you know, how my bum looks in this, whatever, and then sharing on Instagram, whatever, just feels like it's not a good place for people to be. And I do also that whole HIIT intensity. I realise the need to make exercise shorter and more intense. But I've stopped doing triathlon, dodgy hip, but I'm swimming. So I'm doing lots of open water swimming now in the cold. Extraordinary, amazing stuff. Absolutely brilliant, twice a week. And I don't wear my watch anymore. So I had a lovely Polar client, Brad mentioned. But I've stopped wearing that because I don't want to know how long I'm going for. And I know that if I had it, I would want to go further, faster, whatever. And we just swim, and we stop in the middle of a lake, and we'll chat a bit, it's cold, and we'll swim out. But that joy of doing that activity, where from my mental health and well-being, versus everything that's so hit, and it's intense, and it's hard, and it's loud, and I kind of think that can't be good for you. But it does feel like life's quite stressful. So actually, do you want to do exercise that just is almost even more so? And then the stress as to how you look and how you appear, it's just building more, really. Yeah,
and I like what you said about that. You know, fitness is a function of something else. So you know, you're getting fit to be able to do something, not for that, not that as an end goal. And I think that's an interesting way of looking at things. You know, maybe it is too shallow in terms of how we're looking at it, and maybe that it does create a lot of the issues that we're kind of seeing, and maybe that also is limiting the industry, because we're kind of focusing on something that's probably not attainable, and it's probably not actually a great thing. I've, as I said, I've worked out for many years, and it's brilliant. There's so many benefits of it, but when I was younger, it certainly was about some biceps and a chest and a six-pack.
And if that gives you confidence, it's not those terrible things, but it's almost that whole, if that is the only thing. And I think loneliness is such a massive issue in society. Not even, and I think we think about old people being lonely, but new mothers and people that are working in busy offices are very, loneliness is a absolutely massive issue. So actually, if our clubs can make people feel more like they're part of a community and they're included and they belong, and that's why I think sport and teams probably just naturally do that more so than some health clubs might do at the moment. But obviously a successful club. I remember years ago, I was a member of the Metropolitan Club at Twickenham, who the one time in my life where I used to go 5 times a week, bit of step, etc. That's how long ago it was. But we used to go and have curry in the bar after, and it was like a really lovely community club. And I'm sure there are many clubs that are like that now still, but I think that's a bit of that whole feeling part of a community and belonging that is a massive benefit that sometimes we don't portray as a fitness industry, because it's all about fitness and, you know, the superficial elements of changing myself.
Yeah. How do you think the things like some of these obstacle races like Spartan and that play into that? Do you think that's a kind of becoming a bit of a crossover between those two things?
Yeah, and we've worked for Spartan, we work for Rough Runner at the moment. They've got like, remember the Gladiator programme with the Travelator at the end and the big wipeout balls? Anyway, they've got an OCR that's a bit like that. It uses all those weird elements of different game shows. So I think definitely giving people something to train for. And there's a massive growth in mass participation events, so marathons and half marathons and triathlons. So people wanting a challenge and something to train for. So I definitely think that's great. But you look at the growth of Park Run, it's free, it's 5K, it's every Saturday, but people, how much that has grown because it brings people together. So it's a challenge for them to do something, but it's more of as much being part of something too. Anyone can go and run a 5K at 9 o'clock on a Saturday. You don't have to go to the park where it's taking place, but people want to feel part of something.
Yeah, being part of a community.
Yeah, it's very important.
So as your business is obviously centred around communication, I guess that's one of your main sort of functions. So based on what we spoke about, there's some interesting subjects here. How do you think you and others can then probably impact and get some of these messages out? Like, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this would generally agree with the intent that, that some of these things are good to move forward, but more people are going to have to be involved to make that work, and again, same thing for the industry. In order to grow that, there's probably a big pie for a lot of people to benefit from a business perspective, but also from an individual perspective. How can you and others sort of help to get some of those messages over, and if you're doing stuff, what are some of the things that you're doing?
Yeah, I guess from a media perspective, things have changed in those 25 years, from the age of just sending out paper press releases and very traditional media, and I guess that growth of social engagement and people taking recommendations from friends and peers. So socials enabled us to kind of tap into that, to change behaviour through that. I do think there's obviously been a massive growth in influencers, and that's really, we've seen a lot of that in the last 5 or so years, and I think that there's a bubble I think that might burst at some point in the future, in terms of lots of and I guess lots of fake followers and almost like a fake presence has been created about some of those, and brands paying for we get all the time by influencers £1,000 a post, £750 for a mention of something in one, or even in a story that's not even going to be there on Instagram the next day. So there's lots of money in that space. How effective it is, how much we're then measuring an ROI of, do people then buy that product, turn up for that event, etc., because the influencer said so, is another matter. So I think we still do a lot of work with traditional media, so still magazines, newspapers, a lot of that online too, but that's still very much the media that's being consumed. So what was your question?
Yeah, I just in terms of, what are you guys doing? One, in terms of kind of, increasing the participation of the people who are not involved in it, which sounds like there's a lot of people who could really do with it. Absolutely. But probably the way that the options available or that are being talked about a lot are fairly narrow. I've got a very good friend I've been for many years, but he's never liked gyms, but he's kind of found another thing to do. He likes biking, and then he's exercising in some way, but it took him a long time to sort of find that. Yeah,
I think, for us, I think storytelling, case studies, comes back to the whole you can't see it, you can't be it. But I think people, so a lot of our work for many clients is just finding great examples and stories of people doing it and then getting that out in the media. So we do a lot of work with the RFU, with the England Rugby, to get more women playing rugby through warrior camps. And a lot of that will be going down, filming, there was just we did a lovely bit of content of a girl who was a manicurist, a beautician. So she's there doing nails, fine nails, closes the shop, goes down, gets in her kit, out on the rugby pitch, muddy, great fun and what have you. So I think taking some of those stories of people that are like you, that are doing this, and then then getting that out there. And that's where social media and digital is a huge positive, that we can get onto people's phones and get those stories out there. But that is a lot of what we're doing. Not that we weren't doing it before, but I do feel that whole case study, storytelling, the real people reflecting what's out there is a big part of what we do as well.
Yeah.
So
I think that's interesting. With social media, I think you've got a total contrast. You've got the people that the fake looks, the fake likes, and I guess that's almost like kind of luring people thinking that that's the right direction. But one of the things I've found, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, a lot of people I've spoke to that have been very successful on social media, and they don't necessarily have that body. In most cases have got extreme vulnerabilities, if that's the right word, or they're human. They're human, yeah, and what they're doing is they've built these sort of great followings and a lot of influence by. Petra Colborough, we interviewed, talked about it, is meeting people in the cracks. So almost being very open. Look, I'm not perfect. I've got this, and it seems, because I guess the reach of social media, it seems to allow them to connect to lots of people that didn't realise there was other people like them. And being then able to use that to sort of influence in a very positive way. And I suppose it almost comes full circle. It's like, just if you think you've got some issues and you're not great and you're vulnerable and et cetera, then that's probably all more the reason why you should get out on camera and talk about it, because you have got the ability to make a difference because that's what you like. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Absolutely. It's being brave, isn't it? And getting people who are happy to share those stories as well. We do a lot of stuff with England Athletics on Run Together, and they do run and lead and run and talk around mental health issues, but finding some of those case studies that will talk about the challenge that they've had with depression and anxiety, and how running with others and talking with others has changed that. It's hugely powerful for someone to find that and think, I can see that could be me. So absolutely, I think there's a huge opportunity there to take some of those stories and spread them more widely. And then, and I guess that's a bit, you can tell that's a bit that excites me, isn't it? That making change. Actually, if you can impact people's lives through sport and fitness, that's a massive opportunity. That's a bit that excites me, really. Yeah.
So in terms of takeaways then, for what do you think are things that, a couple of things that you think we should be doing, anyone who's listening could do? What are some, like, a simple thing that we could go out? You've been in this communications industry for a long time. You've been in fitness and sport for a long time. You've got a lot of knowledge, probably more so than most people. What aren't we doing that we could do that's very easy, that we could sort of start tomorrow?
I think it's probably there is that broad. I think it's broadening the audience, isn't it? I was with somebody yesterday who was talking about, if we think about that sales funnel, and with where that's coming from. Actually, if you think about the sales funnel as being health, it's just people that want to improve their health. Suddenly, our sales funnel is 90% of the whole population, because everybody is interested, in some way of being healthier. And so I do think that whole perhaps not limiting ourselves as a sector, thinking more broadly. I think collaborative. We talk a lot about collaborative leadership, working with partners. I think we get a little bit siloed in our industry as operators and etc. So I think definitely that looking at working with partners, not being protective of our, the intelligence, whatever that we have. So I think being more open, working with other people, I think that could quickly make a massive difference to communities. Now we talk about being gyms in communities, but are they talking to? And I know it's people banging on it for a long time, but local GPs, local schools, local whatever. But are we really out there in the community, or are we just marketing to the same people that we think might come to our club, gym, centre, but actually to get out and reach the real people that are there and around us could make a massive, massive difference. And a lot of that could be done, I think, through partnerships and through working with other groups and so on as well.
Do you think we do have a bit of an identity problem? We're sort of painting ourselves to be something that's probably, because I like the metaphor you gave is the funnel. Health is massive.
I must say it's not my metaphor. It's Tara Dillon's metaphor. Okay. I should give her credit for that.
It's a great metaphor anyway. But it's a massive industry, and yet at the moment, certainly in the UK, I've spoke to a lot of operators. It's very competitive. It's tough. It's not an easy market here, but yet there's so many people that need this, and we're probably not talking to.
Yeah, it was a fantastic presentation. It was one of the Les Mills business presentation at FIBO. I don't know if you. So very open-minded psychologist talk, but he talked about the whole what are we in. So I will give him credit for these thoughts that just made the penny drop with me. But what are we in the business of, and what will be the disruptor? So he talked about the fact that, you know, Spotify changed. It wasn't someone in the music sector that made Spotify change. It was someone from outside the sector. PayPal was someone outside the banking sector. You know, so what are the bits that's going to come in and will completely disrupt our sector? Is it 3D printing of skin, of heart, of lungs? Is it a tablet that will reduce obesity overnight? So if that happened, why would people come to our boxes that were built for the 1990s with everything like? What is it that they'll come for? So why are people coming to us, and what is the property, the entity that we are as a fitness sector? And if it is only about weight loss and how our bodies appear, something can come along tomorrow that would just change that. So it's all about broadening to create a place that's fun, and you're collaborative, you're working with the people, you're enjoying yourself, you're getting more confidence, you're all those things. Maybe that's why people should be coming to us, or we look at the mix that's in our facilities too. So for me, it's interesting, Phoebe, this year, I learned a lot more going to the sessions and I guess hearing and talking to people. But that was something for me that really did make me think, what are we in the business of? Yeah. And if it's just changing shape and getting people fitter, somebody else could come along and be doing that. Yeah. In 5 years' time, and we'll look back and go like the blockbuster moment, or Netflix to whatever. What's the bit that's going to disrupt our industry?
And that's interesting because I guess use blockbuster. I suppose years ago you thought if you want a movie, you go to a shop, a bricks and mortar location, you go and take it out, and that's what you thought. I suppose for a gym, we think at the moment a gym is a fitness factory, with walls and a place in it,
But we've talked forever about outside. I have heard for the last 15 years, we need to be outside the walls of our gym. And I guess a lot of the downloading of apps, that is growing. There is more people doing stuff to engage the people outside of the gym in terms of social and the digital bits and so on. But maybe not as much as you would have thought there might have been. And I guess that was probably, I say banging on about FIBO, but it was just last week. But actually, is that piece of whether it's artificial intelligence or digital, or how we're engaging that? There almost need to be another hall of technology, the next stage of technology, and how that's going to change fitness, engagement, changing behaviour, all those things as well. Whereas it did feel like it was much of FIBO that was 10 years ago that hadn't really moved on. And actually, if you came back to the UK and you walked on those facilities, they would probably all look much the same as they did 20, 25 years ago. They don't look, so obviously there's more of them.
Not radically different.
Not radically different. So I guess that's my bit of it. It hasn't made that massive evolution. And maybe it won't do and it doesn't need to, but I almost feel that you look at everything else around you that is changing and has changed, and that feels like it's something that could do in terms of where people are going to get that piece. And I think, obviously, with the virtual fitness and the downloading and streaming of workouts, there's definitely a growth in that area of people. It's like Jane Fonda going back to the beginning, isn't it? People, rather than DVDs and videos at home, people are watching, on their screens, etc., workouts and so on. So there definitely is a growth in that space. Yeah.
So, a couple of final questions then, but before we go on to that, just can you talk about, where people can find you, your podcast, your business? For people who don't know you, what do you do?
Yes, didn't do that. Thank you. So my agency is Promote PR. So we've got a big party tomorrow, celebrating 25 years in business this week. We are, there's 10 of us at the moment. So very much sport, fitness. That's kind of been our thing. Comms for the sports and physical activity sector. So we turn down lots of stuff that's not sport and fitness. That's very much been our... Actually, I'm going to go back and answer one of your previous questions as to what advice would you give people. We've remained really true to what we're about the whole time that we've been in existence. So I think that's whole, know what you are, be passionate about it and stick with it. So we haven't kind of moved off to other things that have come in across the years. So I'm answering a previous question as I answered that one too. So that's us to Promote PR. So
are you just in the UK, or are you?
We're doing more global now. So we're working for Dunlop globally. We've done some stuff with Gatorade globally. So we're getting more clients that want us to do global stuff. So that's a bit of I think Nasima coming in and almost giving us the confidence to say, actually, we are doing this anyway, but let's talk about it more. But it tends to be primarily on comms in the UK because you almost need to have that kind of local culture, language, media. We can distribute stuff, but really, for us to get some stuff in a German magazine, we don't really know the media. We know the UK media really. So it tends to be primarily UK. And the other question, the podcast. The podcast is called The Game Changers. Hasn't launched yet, so don't quite look yet, but coming soon. So it's around trailblazing women in sport. So amazing sportswomen who have gone out and made a difference to the world and just telling their stories, really. So an amazing response from people that have wanted to be on it so far. So we shall see where it goes to. So a bit inspired by yours. I'm just doing this first series of 8, but now it's 10 or 11. And I guess I've been talking forever about there's not enough profile for female athletes and females in sport. So a little bit of it is my giving back, my chance to go and say, well, let's just go and do this. Let's make some noise and create something too. So hopefully it will be a success. We'll wait and see.
And if anyone knows someone that would be a great guest on that, how would they be able to connect with you?
I guess just to drop me, I'm sure you'll put it in your show notes, but drop me an email, let us know. Yeah, I'd love to hear from people.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So 2 final questions then. So what's the sport fitness industry going to look like in sort of 5 to 10 years' time, do you think? What's your prediction on that?
Oh, goodness. I always like, because it's what I want and what it will be, isn't it, really? I guess I almost like to see it more converging with sport. I think that whole, and I know there's we could do a whole other podcast, couldn't we, on the financial issues around leisure management of leisure centres in the UK and austerity, and then not having enough money to fulfil the contracts of the centres they're running. So I think if it wasn't for all those issues, I'd like to feel we had more community hubs that maybe had a GP surgery and a library and whatever, and had physical activity and sport included in that. So sports halls and pitches and all that stuff, because actually that, at the end of the day, that is also fitness. I think there's that balance. When we talk about fitness, we think about the gyms, and the gym is only an element of a leisure centre, albeit it's often the bit that makes the money, unfortunately, so gets the profile. But the bit that I'd love to see grow and flourish further are the courts and the pitches and the pools and all those bits that people can come and play sport together with some fitness, rather than fitness being at the heart of that too. So maybe some more collaboration in that space would be good.
Yeah, okay. And then final question. So escape your limits is about escaping what you've believed is probably impossible, or other people have told you is impossible. What would be a sort of an example of where you've escaped your own personal limits?
Recently, my cold water swimming might be one. So going into the lake at less than 5 degrees in a swimming costume over a weekend, whatever. So that's been amazing. And I think that's a physical thing. It is the most, I keep saying the most extraordinary thing. It is just brilliant. Recommend it to anybody. But that whole overcoming it, and I think I've read into more of the science behind it now, but I think part of the joy of it is overcoming something that your body wouldn't want you to do. It's like walking through fire or whatever, because your body knows it is going to be cold and painful and you shouldn't do it. You might die.
Do you walk through fire very often?
No, exactly. Do that on Mondays. So I think probably that has been. And I've become a vegan, actually, in January. I did Veganuary in January. And I guess probably 2 or 3 years ago, I would have thought that was completely ridiculous. Is this the kind of stuff you want?
Yeah.
Escaping your limits?
Could be anything.
It's a bit different, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that has been... so I went with my daughter, I did a Veganuary, and I'll be a vegan forever now. I don't think I'll go back. So I think once you...
Do you feel better after?
I don't feel any different. I don't know that I feel better. I've lost a stone in weight, without, still eating what I want, but it's limited more of what you can eat, I guess. But I think and I did it more for, I guess, the planet. And as soon as you do it, then you start thinking and you read and watch videos and just say, oh my God, how have I not done this before? So I guess compassion for animals and animal cruelty was almost the last of my reasons for doing it. It was more around my health and then looking at what milk and cheese and all those things are doing to me. And it was more around, the ecology and what we're doing in terms of global warming. And my family have said I'm not allowed to be preachy, so I'm allowed to be a vegan, but I can't be preachy about it. But once you start opening your mind to it and looking at it, I think we just no one thinks about where their food comes from. You couldn't do, or you wouldn't eat it almost. No. But I think once you don't do it, then you can read and watch and learn more, and it is really quite scary. So I guess those are the 2 things that I probably have done in the last year or so that I wouldn't have done in the past. Fantastic.
Well, Sue, it's been wonderful. It's certainly given me quite a bit of food for thought, and I hope it has for whoever's listening. And also keep a lookout for the podcast. Just what's the name again?
The Game Changers.
The Game Changers. Yeah, I'm going to be looking out for that as well. And success with everything. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Okay, John?
Oh,
good?
That's lovely.
Is that right?
That was so much nicer than I thought it was going to be.
Really? You thought it was going to be painful, did you?